Hi, it's Tom from Big Tom here, and I want to just consider for a second that let's say that there's been 10,000 people who've passed their driving test in a day, say 10,000. Out of that 10,000 people, how many of those will then go on to have an accident, having passed their driving test? Because statistically, it is known that the likelihood of having accidents varies depending on things to do like experience and age and gender and stuff like that. And I don't want to get too bogged down in statistics because it starts to become a bit more like theory, and I want to just give some advice for practical driving, safe driving. So the question is, having passed a driving test, well, why should there be some people who are more likely to have an accident than others? Why should that happen? They've all passed their driving test. Kind of doesn't make sense, does it? And there's going to be a variety of reasons for that, but one of the reasons I want to talk about is to do with your attitude to chance, to risk, if you like. And it's interesting because when you first start learning to drive and you start driving up to those T-junctions, you're in the minor road and you're coming up to the giveways at the T-junction. Sometimes people sort of have this, they have this kind of, not force, but for some reason they feel like they don't want to be stopping the car, and they feel like they just want to emerge out into the major road, having not really checked that everything is safe. And they might do that a few times, but they'll very quickly soon realise that that's not a safe way to go about emerging out of a junction. And this happens really early on when they're learning to drive. So they start to sense this idea of, I don't know, I'm approaching a junction where I want to turn left or right into the major road, and I don't know whether it's safe to do that. So do I keep the car going in the hope that, the chance that I'm going to be okay, or do I take a bit more of a defensive attitude with this and be more prepared to pause because I just don't know whether it's safe to go? And then as somebody continues learning to drive, that this subject crops up more and more and more. And sometimes people aren't very experienced at identifying the potential for a hazard or a developing hazard, something that's kind of increasing in risk as they're bowling up to it. Some people kind of struggle with identifying that, and other people do identify that there is an increased risk for whatever's coming up, but they don't really, they're a bit chancy in their mind. They know it's there, but they're still prepared to take that chance. And it's interesting because, they were doing that on the junctions in the very early days of learning to drive. And yet, having learned the fact that, oh, blimey, I better be more careful here because I just can't go in those situations. Having gone through that process, they're still prepared to do that. And let me give you some practical examples of when that might crop up. Let's say you're going on a dual carriageway or a motorway and it's foggy. Or up ahead it's foggy. There's rolling or banking fog. Sometimes it's clearer and then you go into fog, and then sometimes it clears and you go into fog. Well, how do you know that when you're going into that fog there that everything is actually okay? Because you can't see it's okay. So how do you actually know that? You really don't, do you? But do you stay at the same speed, or do you reduce your speed because you just don't know what's in the bit where the fog is? When you're driving along a road, and let's say in the distance you see there's a couple of cars parked on the left-hand side of the road, do you think to yourself, oh, there's a potential here of a kid, say, running out from between the parked cars, or don't you? Are you thinking to yourself, well, there's a chance here, there's a chance that I can't see there's a kid, and the kid might run out from between those cars, and so therefore I'll just slow down a little bit, or don't you think that? And another practical example is on a country road, when you're going round a bend on a country road and you don't know what's around the bend. So say, for example, a lorry is coming the other way. You can't see the lorry, but there is a lorry coming the other way, and because it's quite a sharp bend, the lorry's going to naturally have to go towards the middle of the road. You take my point. In other words, you're going the other way, and there's going to be potential there for a collision. Nothing the lorry driver can do, because of the fact that he or she's driving a lorry, a big long lorry. Then consequently, they need more space to get round the bend. So there's nothing they can do about that. But you're driving along, and are you even thinking that there's a possibility of a lorry coming, or even a motorbike coming round that bend? Are you even considering that there is a chance that might happen? When you're in a car park and you're reversing out of a bay, are you thinking that there might be someone around your vehicle, either a pedestrian or even another vehicle nearby? Are you even considering that might actually be happening? You get my point. I'm giving practical examples here of situations where there is a chance that something might happen. And what tends to happen is that drivers who have passed their driving test, some will adopt that attitude that there is a chance, there is a risk with these situations, and so therefore they will adapt their driving to incorporate, to accommodate, I should say, the potential for that risk. And others just simply won't. Others will just think, well, I've passed my driving test. So I'm just going to drive now, because nobody can deny that I've passed my driving test. I have done. So therefore I'm just going to drive, and I'm not, and they're not going to be overly concerned necessarily about these increased risks, unless, of course, or until I should say, something happens when they're reversing out of the bay park, out of the car parking bay in a supermarket car park, and they do hit something, maybe stationary, or even get close to hitting a pedestrian that they just didn't see. They didn't see because they weren't looking, because they weren't thinking to themselves that there was potential here for a pedestrian being there. Or they go round that bend, that country road bend, and sure enough there is a motorbike coming the other way, or a lorry, or the kid does run out in front of them from between the parked cars that they didn't see. And then, of course, they just can't stop in time, because they can't. You've always got to be able to stop your car in the distance that you can see is clear, is safe. You've always got to be able to do that. It's a fundamental point of safe driving. And if you don't, so if your vision goes down and you don't know what's round that bend, or you don't know if there's somebody who's going to come out from behind that parked car, if your vision goes down, if you don't take your speed down appropriately, reduce your speed, then if and when that eventually does crop up, you are not prepared for that to happen, and consequently you just don't have the ability to adapt to that hazard. And this is why accidents happen, and this is why some people are more prone to having accidents once they've passed their driving test than others who likewise have just passed their driving test, but they're less likely to have an accident. And it's referred to as defensive driving, and it's a mind thing. This is something that is about your attitude to safe driving, and it comes down to what your approach is to the what ifs situations. The what if something is coming round there? What if a kid does come out from between the parked car? What if there's something that's going to happen? I just can't see what is around that bend. And what if there is something that's going to be there? And it comes down to chance, it comes down to risk, it comes down to your attitude of confidence or overconfidence. There's lots of things about this, but I'm just making the point that some people will struggle to see the potential for the hazard, and other people they'll know that it's there, but they won't be overly bothered about it. They won't actually, in terms of chance and risk, they don't think that it's going to happen to them. They just don't think it's going to happen to them. Okay, and that video there is just talking a little bit about risk and chance and how we can improve the chances of once you've passed your driving test to stay safe, and this is one of the aspects of that.